who God is. Anybody want to share something in your childhood that just you can remember, just that one incident?
I thought, I'd be laying in the bed and I thought there was something out the window. I saw something moving.
Yes.
It was just the bushes and I thought it was a person, you know. And I would stay up every night and I would see it. And it was just fear for over me.
Yes, and you know, fear can even form those bushes into a human form.
Yeah, that's what
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? I mean, I've had that happen in my own life. You know, fear actually takes control of my perspective. Write it down. Fear takes control of your perspective. And you begin to filter everything through. When fear is not a hold of you, when a spirit of fear grabs a hold of you, you begin to see a demon under every rock or behind every bush. I've shared with you in times past that, you know, my mother died when I was 9 years old, and it was a very unexpected death. My mother had never been sick a day in her life. She never had a cold. She never had, I mean, she was just a, you know, strong woman. And she, for some reason, had decided that she wanted to lose 10 pounds. And there was a doctor down on 4th Avenue and 4th Street in Harvey who had an office open. And actually, all of her friends were going there because he would give them some pills to help them lose weight. Well, we're talking about the early 60s when amphetamines had just come out on the market. And my mother went over there with her friends. They were the girls from her WMU, Women's Mission Union at church. And they all went over there because they all decided they wanted to lose 10 pounds. And this is long before Twiggy ever showed up on the scene. You know, they decided they were all going to go over there. So my mother went over there and she got on the pills. But of course, the reality was she had high blood pressure. And she should have never been taking an amphetamine. And one morning, I woke up and I heard my mother crying down the hallway. I heard her from my bedroom. And I went down the hallway, and my mother was lying in the bed, and she was in excruciating pain, and she asked me to please go find my dad. My dad got up, and he would walk the block every morning and for his exercise. And so I went out, and at 9 years old, it was in February 10th. And no, it was before that. It was probably February 7th. And I ran around the block in my pajamas on a cold February morning, crying for my daddy, trying to find my dad. And it was in the fall. There was a lot of fall. And I found my dad, and I told my dad that something was very wrong. I didn't know. I was just a child. So my dad ran home, back to the house. My father had just had open heart surgery about 2 months before that. So for him to run was not a really good idea. But he ran home, and within moments, the ambulance came and took my mother to the hospital. I never saw my mother again alive. They rolled her out on the gurney, and if you ask if my brain can go there right now, isn't it amazing how our brains save information? I can remember my mom being rolled out of her bedroom on a gurney, and I remember her being rolled out of the house, and that was the last time I saw her. That Sunday afternoon, my dad picked me up from where I had been staying, and he told me we were going to go to the hospital and see my mom. Well, I was so excited because I hadn't seen her, and I was just so excited because I was going to get to see my mom. And we came to the stoplight on the West Bank Expressway. It was in Marrero, where you turn left going to the West Jefferson Hospital. I can remember the exact corner. I think it was the second or third stoplight after you come out of the Harvey Tunnel. And my dad reached over and he took my hand. And he said, darling, he said, I don't know if Mom's going to be coming home with us. What did that mean? To a 9-year-old, I had just turned 9 years old. I had no clue what that meant. Mom may not be coming home with us. And I'm thinking, never explained to me that the rest of that sentence. He never explained the following part of that meant that my mother might die. He just said my mother may not be coming home. Well, we got to the hospital. We got off of the elevator on the 3rd floor, and we turned the corner at the nurse's station to go down the hallway, and the doctor and my brothers came out, and my brothers were sobbing out loud. My mother had expired. Talk about a forced change. Nobody told me. I mean, even my dad didn't even give me the total information. But the reality is, it was in that time I was forced. It was a crisis. I didn't understand death. I didn't even know what death was. I just turned 9 years old. I had never had a pet that died. Okay? So I didn't know how permanent death was. Days went by, of course, and they planned the funeral, and I got to go and look at my mother dressed up in a box. Made no sense to me. I'd never been to a funeral before, and I really didn't know why she was sleeping when everybody else was there. It was a crisis. It was a shattered dream, and I didn't even realize the extent of it. You know, sometimes the crisis or the shattered dream comes and we don't even realize how permanent of a change it is. We don't realize how God is saying, we're changing everything. We're going to change everything right now, and things are going to be different. So, this is what we have to remember. It's in those times that we have to remember God is present. I didn't even think of at that time at 9 years old and asking God to give me my mother back. I never asked that. In the book, it went on to describe in a little bit more detail the testimony he gave where he prayed, God, just this one time, make this heart beat. Just this one time. I didn't even get to that place because I was so caught unaware. And I tell you that story to say that some of us, even at the age that we're at now, when a change comes, you are as naive at that moment as I was at 9 years old of how this change was going to change my life forever. You are totally and completely unaware of the long plan that God is making, the change, the shift. But this is what I know, what I can tell you. It may not be easy. Plan B may stink at the beginning, but the reality is, and it may break your heart and it may shatter you, but this is the good news, is that God works all things. All things, not some things. He works all things. How he does it when people screw up so bad, I don't know. You know, the interesting part about it is my mother loved God, served God, she was the woman in the church that brought the flowers every Sunday. She loved gardening, and she would put the beautiful flower arrangements together, and she would bring them. I mean, I can remember every Saturday